Hello, my dear. It's Emma. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Come in, get comfortable. Pull the blankets up if you need to, adjust your pillow. Let your body settle into wherever you are. There's no rush. I've been preparing for this, tidying the space, making tea, lowering the lamp by the window. Outside, I can hear the ocean, that slow rhythm that never stops. And now you're here, which means we can begin. Tonight, I want to talk to you about a book. A very old book, older than your great-great-grandparents, probably. A book that was scandalous when it was published, misunderstood for decades, and somehow still echoing through every romance novel that makes your heart race a little faster than it should. I want to talk to you about Wuthering Heights, and I want to trace something with you. A thread, a bloodline almost running from 1847 from a parsonage on the Yorkshire moors, where a quiet woman named Emily Brontë wrote something that shocked even her own sister. All the way to today, to the books on your nightstand or your e-reader, to the ones you might not admit you've read, to Twilight, to 50 Shades of Grey, to A Court of Thorns and Roses, to Fourth Wing, to those darker stories you found on TikTok, the ones with the possessive heroes and the dangerous love interests, and the relationships that probably shouldn't work, but somehow, you can't look away. That thread begins here, in the cold, on the moors, with a man named Heathcliff and a woman named Catherine, and a love so consuming it destroyed everyone it touched. So settle in, love. Let your shoulders drop. If you fall asleep while I'm talking, that's perfectly fine, more than fine, actually. That means your body trusts me to keep going. I'll still be here, following the thread, and you can always come back. Let's begin. Before we talk about dark romance, I want you to feel something. Close your eyes, or let them close, if they're already heavy, and imagine. It's 1847. You're in the north of England, in Yorkshire, and you're standing on the moors. Not the gentle English countryside you might picture from Austen adaptations, no rolling green hills, no sun-dappled estates. This is different. This is wind. Endless wind, the kind that pushes through your clothes and into your bones. The landscape is open and vast and exposed, heather and bracken and peat, stretching to the horizon under a sky that seems perpetually gray. There are no trees here to break the wind. The few that exist are bent, twisted by decades of leaning away from the gales. The houses are built low and sturdy, stone walls thick enough to keep out the weather, small windows to preserve heat. When the mist rolls in, and it does, often you can barely see 10 feet in front of you. People have gotten lost on these moors. People have died. This is the world Emily Brontë knew. She lived at the edge of it, at Haworth Parsonage, with her father, her brother, her sisters Charlotte and Anne. The parsonage overlooked a graveyard. The water supply was contaminated by the bodies buried there. The average life expectancy in Haworth was 25 years. Emily rarely left. She didn't want to. When she was sent away to school, she became physically ill with homesickness, not for the parsonage itself, but for the moors. She walked them constantly, in all weather. She loved the wildness, the exposure, the way the landscape didn't pretend to be gentle. When she wrote Wuthering Heights, she poured that landscape into every page. The house itself, Wuthering Heights, not Thrushcross Grange, is described as being so battered by wind that the trees beside it grow slanted. The name Wuthering means exactly that. The atmospheric tumult, the wild weather, the howling. And into this landscape she placed Heathcliff, a child brought from Liverpool by old Mr. Earnshaw, found starving on the streets, speaking a language no one understood. Dark-skinned enough that the other characters comment on it. Named after a dead Earnshaw son, as if he's meant to replace something lost. Given a place in the family, but never truly accepted by it. Beaten by Hindley after Mr. Earnshaw dies. Degraded, humiliated, and loved desperately, completely by Catherine. This is the soil from which dark romance grows. Not a ballroom, not a country estate, not sunshine and wit, but wind and isolation, and two souls who find each other in the cold and become so intertwined they can never be separated, not by marriage, not by years, not even by death. Now, you may have encountered the term dark romance recently. It's everywhere now, a whole genre, a whole aesthetic. On BookTok, on Kindle Unlimited, in whispered recommendations between friends. Have you read Haunting Adeline? You need to try Penelope Douglas. If you liked A Court of Thorns and Roses, you'll love this one, but it's darker. What do we mean when we say that? What makes a romance dark? Let me walk through some of the elements, and as I do, I want you to notice something. I want you to notice how old these elements actually are, how none of this is new, how Emily Brontë in 1847 understood every single one of them. the morally gray hero. Perhaps the most iconic feature of dark romance. The love interest who is not good, not kind, not safe. He may be cruel. He may be obsessive. He may do things that, in any other context, would be unforgivable. And yet the narrative asks us to understand him, to see where he came from, to feel the wound beneath the violence. Heathcliff is the original, truly the original. He digs up Catherine's grave to see her face. He orchestrates the ruin of 2 entire families across 2 generations. He tells Nellie Dean, our narrator, that he has no pity, that the more worms writhe, the more he yearns to crush them. He's monstrous. And yet, Emily Brontë makes us understand exactly how he became this way. We watch Hindley degrade him. We watch Catherine choose Edgar Linton. We feel his heartbreak calcify into rage. We know that under the cruelty is a boy who was never allowed to belong anywhere except in Catherine's arms. Every possessive, dangerous, morally compromised hero in modern dark romance carries a piece of Heathcliff in his blood, the all-consuming obsession. Dark romance doesn't deal in ordinary love. It deals in fixation, in need so intense it becomes indistinguishable from destruction. The heroes in these stories don't just want the heroine, they need her like oxygen. They will burn down their own lives to have her. They will burn down her life too, if necessary. Be with me always, Heathcliff begs Catherine's ghost. Take any form, drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss where I cannot find you. Oh God, it is unutterable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul. That's not a metaphor. He means it literally. When Catherine dies, Heathcliff doesn't grieve and move on. He spends the next 18 years willing himself toward death so he can be with her again. He tells Nellie he sees her everywhere in the stones, in the clouds, in every feature of the landscape. His obsession is so complete that reality itself becomes intolerable because she is not in it. Compare this to Twilight. Edward Cullen watches Bella sleep. He follows her. He tells her she's his personal brand of heroine. When he leaves her, she collapses into a months-long depression. When she thinks he's dead, she tries to die too. Their love isn't healthy. It was never meant to be. It's Heathcliff and Catherine in modern dress. Vampirism as metaphor for the consuming nature of that kind of passion. Or 50 Shades. Christian Grey's need for control, his possessiveness, his inability to let Anna have boundaries. These are Heathcliff's traits filtered through a different lens. The damage underneath, the obsessive focus, the sense that without this one person, nothing else matters. The heroine who matches him. This is important. Dark romance heroines are not victims, or if they are, they don't stay that way. They meet the hero's intensity with their own. They push back. They understand him in ways no one else can. Often, they're the only person who sees beneath the monster to the wounded thing underneath. Catherine Earnshaw is not a passive character. She's wild, selfish, passionate, and utterly certain of her own feelings. I am Heathcliff, she tells Nellie. Not I love him, I am him. Their souls are the same substance. When she marries Edgar Linton for security, for social position, she doesn't stop loving Heathcliff. She simply believes she can have both, that the external marriage won't touch the internal bond. She's wrong, of course. That choice destroys all three of them. But notice, she makes the choice. She has agency. She's not swept away by Heathcliff against her will. She chooses Edgar consciously, strategically, and pays the price. Feyre in a court of thorns and roses walks into the fairy lands to save her family. She survives Amarantha. She chooses Rysand over Tamlin when she realizes what she needs has changed. Bella chooses to become a vampire. Even Anastasia Steele, for all the criticism of those books, chooses to stay, chooses to push Christian's boundaries, chooses her own path through the power dynamics. Dark romance heroines choose, often badly, but the choice is theirs. The Gothic atmosphere. This one might seem obvious, but it matters. Dark romance lives in shadows. Old houses with secrets. Isolated settings where the normal rules don't apply. Storm and winter and moors and castles and territories where humans are prey. Wuthering Heights is a house that feels alive with malevolence. The weather is a character. The moors are both beautiful and deadly. You can feel the cold seeping through the pages. A court of thorns and roses puts Feyre in a fairy court full of danger and ancient magic. Fourth Wing drops its heroine into a war college where death is expected. Twilight relocates to Forks, Washington, perpetually overcast, surrounded by forest, one of the rainiest places in America. 50 Shades takes place in sleek modern spaces, but the Red Room itself is a Gothic chamber, a space of transgression hidden behind ordinary walls. The setting tells you this is not a safe place. The rules you know don't work here. anything could happen. Emily Brontë understood all of this in 1847. She invented the template. Every dark romance you've ever read is, in some way, a cover version of the song she wrote first. I want to pause here and think about Catherine for a moment, because I think she's often misunderstood, even by people who love this book. People call her selfish, fickle, cruel, and she is those things sometimes. But I'd like to imagine what it felt like to be her. You're a girl in the early 1800s in Yorkshire. Your family is respectable, but not wealthy. You live in a farmhouse on the moors, not an estate. Your mother died when you were young. Your father brought home a strange, dark-eyed child one day, and you loved him instantly, wildly, with your whole soul. You grew up together. You ran on the moors together. You were the same creature in two bodies. He was everything to you. And then your father dies, and your brother takes over. And suddenly Heathcliff, your Heathcliff, is degraded, treated as a servant, forbidden to eat with the family, beaten, humiliated. And you realize something. The world doesn't care what you feel. The world operates on money and property and social position. You are a woman. You cannot work. You cannot own property in your own name. You cannot vote. You have exactly one path to security, to respect, to a life that isn't dependent on your brother's goodwill. Marriage. Heathcliff has nothing. He's been made nothing. If you marry him, you will be nothing too. Edgar Linton is kind, gentle, rich. He lives at Thrushcross Grange, which is warm and light and comfortable. He adores you. He can give you everything Heathcliff cannot: status, security, a future. What do you do? I'm not asking you to approve of Catherine's choice. I'm asking you to feel its weight, the impossibility of it. She tells Nellie that marrying Heathcliff would degrade her, and people have criticized that line for over a century. But she's not wrong. In that world, in that time, it would. She would lose everything: her social position, her comfort, possibly even the ability to help Heathcliff at all. So she chooses Edgar, and she tells herself that it doesn't matter, because her love for Heathcliff exists on a different plane entirely. Her love for Edgar is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it. Her love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. She's right and wrong at the same time. She's right that her feelings for Heathcliff are deeper. She's wrong that she can compartmentalize. The choice tears her apart. It tears all of them apart. When I read modern dark romance, I often notice that the stakes are different now. The heroines have more options. They can work, own property, leave. But the emotional core is the same. A woman trapped between who she is and what the world expects of her. Between the love that makes sense and the love that makes her feel alive. Between safety and fire. Catherine chose safety, and it killed her. Slowly, from the inside out. That's the tragedy. Not that she was selfish, though she was. Not that she was cruel, though she was that too. But that the world gave her no path that didn't involve loss. She could have Heathcliff and lose everything else, or she could have everything else and lose herself. Some of you listening know what that feels like. Not the specific circumstances, but the shape of it. The impossible choice. Now let me turn to him, to Heathcliff. Because understanding Heathcliff is understanding why the morally gray hero persists. Why we keep returning to characters who should repulse us, but don't. When we first meet Heathcliff, he's a child, starving, found on the streets of Liverpool, a port city, a place where ships came from everywhere, including slave ships. Emily Brontë never tells us where he came from. She lets us wonder. She lets the other characters wonder too, and project their assumptions onto his dark skin and strange speech. Mr. Earnshaw brings him home out of compassion, names him Heathcliff after a son who died, gives him a place in the family, but a place is not the same as belonging. Hindley, the son, hates him immediately, sees him as a usurper. After Mr. Earnshaw dies, Hindley degrades Heathcliff systematically, takes away his education, makes him work as a laborer, beats him, humiliates him publicly, and Heathcliff endures. He endures because of Catherine. She's his anchor, his reason, his only source of warmth in a world of cruelty. As long as she exists, as long as she loves him, he can survive anything. Then she chooses Edgar. He overhears her telling Nellie that marrying him would degrade her. He doesn't stay to hear the rest, that she loves him more than anything, that their souls are the same. He only hears the rejection, and he vanishes. When he returns, 3 years later, everything has changed. He's wealthy now, we never learn how. Educated, polished, dangerous. He's no longer a victim. He's become a predator. And this is where Emily Brontë does something extraordinary. She doesn't redeem him. She doesn't soften him. She lets him become a monster, and she still makes us understand why. Heathcliff systematically destroys the two families that made him, the Earnshaws and the Lintons. He manipulates Hindley into gambling away Wuthering Heights. He marries Edgar's sister Isabella, not out of love, but as a weapon. He beats her. He imprisons her. When their son is born, he uses the boy as a pawn. He forces the next generation, Catherine's daughter, and Linton, his own sickly son, into a marriage designed to give him control of Thrushcross Grange. He's cruel, deliberately, consciously cruel. He tells Nellie he has no pity. He means it. And yet, when Catherine dies, something in him dies too. He doesn't move on. He doesn't heal. He spends 18 years haunting the same places, obsessing over her memory, willing her ghost to appear. He digs up her grave not to defile it, but to be close to her. He bribes the sexton to remove the side of her coffin so that when he's buried beside her, their dust will mingle. That's not a villain. That's a wound so deep it became a person. When I think about the heroes of modern dark romance, the Rysans, the Zaddens, the obsessive stalkers of haunting Adeline, I see Heathcliff refracted through different lenses. The common thread is always the same. A man who was broken by the world and who became dangerous because of it. A man whose cruelty is a scar tissue over unbearable pain. A man who loves one person so completely that everyone else becomes furniture. We're drawn to these characters not because we approve of their actions, but because we recognize the feeling underneath. The hunger to belong, the fury at being cast out, the desperate, consuming need to be loved by the one person who sees you as human. Heathcliff was seen by Catherine, only by Catherine. And when she chose someone else, even knowing it would kill her too, he had nothing left but revenge and grief. One of the questions that haunts this book, and I use that word deliberately, is whether it's a ghost story. The novel opens and closes with ghosts. Lockwood, our frame narrator, sees the ghost of Catherine at the window, or dreams he does, or imagines he does. She's been dead for nearly 2 decades, but she's scratching at the glass, begging to be let in. Let me in, let me in. Her wrist bleeds on the broken pane. Lockwood, terrified, rubs her arm against the glass to make her let go. At the end of the novel, after Heathcliff dies, people in the village claim to see them together, walking the moors. standing at the window of Wuthering Heights. Shepherd boys refuse to pass the house after dark. Are they real? Emily Brontë never tells us. She lets the supernatural hover at the edges, never quite confirmed, never quite denied. The moors are a liminal space between civilization and wilderness, between life and death. This ambiguity is part of what makes the book feel so alive still after all this time. It's not a tidy story with a clear moral. It's a story about love so intense it might breach the boundary between worlds. About grief so consuming it might pull someone back from death. Modern dark romance inherits this liminality. The fairy courts of a court of thorns and roses exist between worlds. The vampires of Twilight are undead, suspended between life and death. The dragon riders of Fourth Wing live on the edge of war, where death is always one wingbeat away. Even the contemporary dark romances often have a dreamlike quality. The stalker who sees everything, knows everything, seems almost supernatural in his obsession. We're drawn to these spaces because they're where the normal rules don't apply, where love can be as vast and consuming as it feels, without the constraints of everyday life. Heathcliff and Catherine couldn't be together in life, not fully, not freely. The world wouldn't allow it. But in death, on the moors, in the mist, in the space between worlds, maybe there, finally, they can have what they were denied. It's a dark comfort, but it's a comfort nonetheless. So here we are, nearly 200 years after Emily Brontë wrote this book, and it's still alive, still controversial, still misunderstood, still generating passionate arguments about whether it's a love story or a horror story, whether Heathcliff is a romantic hero or an abuser, whether Catherine is sympathetic or monstrous. The truth, I think, is that it's all of those things. It holds contradictions because human hearts hold contradictions. We love people who hurt us. We make choices that destroy us. We contain multitudes. Modern dark romance understands this. The best examples of the genre don't try to resolve the tension between love and harm. They sit in it. They ask us to feel the pull of dangerous attraction while also recognizing the damage it causes. They trust us to hold complexity. Twilight was criticized for glorifying an unhealthy relationship. Maybe it does. But it also captured something true about the intensity of first love, the feeling that without this person, you would cease to exist. Edward and Bella's relationship isn't a model, it's a mirror. It reflects back the consuming, irrational nature of passion. 50 Shades was criticized even more harshly, and yet it sold over 150 million copies because it touched something in readers, the fantasy of surrender, of being wanted with an intensity that borders on obsession. Christian Grey isn't healthy. He isn't safe, but he's present in a way that ordinary love interests aren't. He notices Anna. He focuses on her. He makes her the center of his universe. A Court of Thorns and Roses gives us Rysand, who does terrible things in the first book, things that look like violation, and then reveals them as protection. Is that a troubling narrative? Maybe. But it also captures something about the complexity of safety, how sometimes what looks protective is controlling, and what looks dangerous is actually the safest place you've ever been. Fourth Wing gives us Xaden, who keeps secrets, who might be an enemy, who is definitely dangerous. And Violet loves him anyway, not in spite of the danger, but because she's not looking for someone safe. She's looking for someone who matches her. These books aren't instructions. They're explorations. They're asking, what does it feel like to want someone you shouldn't? To be wanted by someone dangerous? To love so much it frightens you? Emily Brontë asked those questions first. She didn't give easy answers. Neither do her descendants. I want you to know something before we part for tonight. If you've read dark romance, if you've loved it, been moved by it, hidden it from people who might judge you, you're part of a tradition that's nearly 2 centuries old. You're not broken. You're not twisted. You're responding to something real in the human heart, the desire to be seen completely, to be loved so fiercely that nothing else matters, to find someone who matches the intensity you feel but can't always express. Catherine and Heathcliff are monsters in their way. They're selfish and destructive, and they leave ruin in their wake. But they're also achingly human. They wanted what we all want to belong to someone, to be understood, to not be alone. The moors are cold tonight. I can imagine them if I close my eyes. The wind howling across the heather. The old stone house crouching against the weather. 2 figures walking through the mist, finally together, finally at peace. It's a dark story, but there's comfort in darkness sometimes. In knowing that the feelings we carry, the complicated, messy, too much feelings, have always been part of the human experience. That Emily Brontë felt them too, in her parsonage overlooking the graveyard. That millions of readers have felt them since. You're not alone in your intensity. You never were. If you'd like to experience the full novel, I've recorded it, all of it. The wind and the ghosts and the impossible love. You can find it here, and let me read you the whole story, start to finish. We can walk the moors together. For now, though, rest. You've done enough for today. Let your eyes close if they haven't already. Let your breathing slow. Let the day fall away. I'll be here. I'm always here. Good night, my dear. Sleep well.